Hi everyone. Today we're going to do a migration of a Windows Failover Cluster running on VMware with RDMs to a Nutanix cluster running AHV and also migrating the volume groups as well. So this would be quite a complex migration. As everyone knows, RDMs do add a lot of complexity to the environment, and also migrating them to Nutanix can be quite difficult at times as well. So let's just look what we have here. So essentially we have two clusters deployed. Sorry, one cluster deployed with two nodes running on a VMware cluster. So these VMs are running RDM devices from a SAN. So you can see here there's about 10 disks configured with physical LUN as PRDMs. We also have a SCSI controller, of course, configured with physical bus sharing mode. So here are the two nodes of the cluster. And look at the settings here, we can see that we have a SCSI controller with pass-through, and we have a bunch of RDMs configured. Now, if you look at the virtual machine, there's two pieces of software here. So we have a file cluster all running with two nodes, and we have a bunch of disks. These disks look a bit different to a normal file cluster. The reason being is we're using a software called Veritas Infoscale to do the mirroring of the data. So Veritas Infoscale is a product that's been around for many, many years now, and it's typically used for failover clusters that need a very high degree of availability. So typically when you run Veritas, you have a bunch of LUNs attached to your server, and then you can either stripe or you can mirror the data on your volumes. So what we have here is we have a few different disk groups configured. We have one for quorum, which has two disks configured. These are the RDMs that are passed through to the virtual machine. And what we're doing is we're mirroring those two LUNs. So it's quite and many times in the past, what companies would do if they wanted to build some kind of metro cluster, they could have two SANs in different sites, and then they could mirror all the disks for clustering for a very highly available solution. We also have another volume here for our file server. This has also got mirrored drives, so 4 disks here. And then we have a striped volume as well. So two different types of volumes for Veritas. You can see all the disks there. These are all RDMs. Of course, with Nutanix, we do not support RDMs on Nutanix because we're hyperconverged. So as part of this migration, what we're going to do is we're going to mirror the data from the RDMs straight through to Nutanix volumes over iSCSI, and then migrate the VMs that way. We also want to try and do this online. So hopefully during this migration, we're going to keep the file cluster online and running, serving workloads as well. So I have a script on another server that is going to constantly write files to the volume, so we can see that the volumes will maintain online. So in the back end, the way Veritas works is it basically just creates a bunch of dynamic disks on Windows. A fun fact, Veritas were the company that actually came up with dynamic disks, and then they sold the product to Microsoft. So as you can see here, we have our quorum volumes, our mirrored volumes, and our stripe volumes. So traditionally, you normally cannot do failover clustering with dynamic disks. It's not supported by Microsoft. So this is why you need the Veritas software installed to mirror the data or stripe the data and use it for failover clustering. So that's why instead of seeing the disks, you actually see the volumes here in the failover cluster. So the type is a volume manager disk group. This is basically an add-on that gets added to the failover cluster when you deploy Veritas software. And any data or any disks that you do the mirroring, they'll be get added here as a disk group. So you don't see the individual disks as you do in a traditional cluster. You see the file groups here, which reflect what you see on this. So let's get started. So the first thing we want to do here is we just want to run a script. What the script is doing, it is writing a file to both the shares simultaneously. And if that write fails, if it takes more than 10 seconds or so, it'll actually do an alert out. So we have our share here. We're writing a bunch of small files to it. We have a mirrored volume and we have a stripe volume. So this is hosted on the failover cluster. So we'll leave this in the corner running while we do the rest of our work. So the first thing we want to do is we want to configure a volume group on Nutanix, and then we want to pass through that volume group via iSCSI to the existing Windows Failover Cluster. So let's do that now. We can create a volume group on Nutanix Prism. So we go to storage, we create a brand new volume group. So we'll call this one Veritas Cluster. And we'll add a bunch of disks. So one cool thing you can actually do with Veritas is instead of having a bunch of smaller lumps like this, you can actually just create one disk on volumes, depending on the size, right? Like we don't recommend having the disks too big on Nutanix. So if the data is really large, try and think of like a standard size you want the disks. But for the purpose of this demo, what we're going to do is we're going to add each one iSCSI disk to each volume, each disk group. So we'll do that now. So we'll create a 40 gig disk. This is for the quorum. The reason it is 40 gig is the disks on the SAN that I have are actually all 40 gigs, but I've actually only formatted it down as a 1 gig for quorum. But to make it easier, we'll just add the same size. We will also add a for the Stripe drive. Sorry, for the Stripe drive here. How about we go with a 500 gig, because maybe the customer wants to actually increase the size. So we'll create a 500 gig for that. And then for the mirrored, we probably don't need as much since the data is mirrored. As you can see here, the size is only 70 gigs. So let's create a 200 gig mirrored drive for that. So let's save this. We'll create the volume group. Now we need to actually add the volume group into the existing Windows Failover cluster using iSCSI. So we'll just wait for that to create. In the interim, we will have a look at our iSCSI manager, attach the disks to the cluster. So we have our target here. So what we need to do here is we need to get the IQN of the server, and we need to add it into the volume group that we just created here. So we want to add a new client. We add that in. Click Save. Volume group will get updated, and we can actually add it into the server. Cool. So there are our drives here. Let's connect all these disks. So as you'll see here, these will get added into Veritas. They don't have a signature, so next what we'll do is we'll actually add them to the groups. But let's add them to the other node in our fail cluster as well. So we will connect to cluster 2. And we will open up our iSCSI properties. We will add in our IQN here. So just find that, copy that, click update, add new client. We allow concurrent access, so we add it in, and we have both our disks there. So now if we refresh it, these should show up. Work on node 1. We'll connect in, and then what we'll do is we will start the data mirror across the cluster. So as you can see here, of course, the file share is still online, and we have our 3 disks here. So first of all, what we need to do is we need to write a signature to try one at a time. Try that again. Okay, that disk worked. That disk worked. So there's something wrong with our. It went offline. Yeah, there we go, online disk. Yeah, so if the disk is not online, you won't not be able to write the signature, obviously. So I think what happened is the other cluster node tried to take control of that. So yeah, cool. There we go. So now the signature's written. So first of all, we'll do the quorum group. So we want to add disk number 11 to our quorum group. And once the disk is in that quorum, what we can do is we can actually start the data mirroring onto the iSCSI drive. So we'll take disk 11. We are going to add it to the quorum group here, and then click next. And the disk will be added to our quorum group. So as you can see here, the disk has been added to the quorum. We can add another mirror to this drive. We can select the drive manually. So we select this 40 gig one that we added, and we want to add one mirror. And we'll do it like that, and then click finish. So as you see there, the drive has mirrored pretty quickly because it's just a quorum drive, there's nothing there. And now what we can do is we can actually take the data offline as well. First of all, I think it might be a good idea just to check that the failover cluster is still up and running with the quorum. Yeah, the quorum will come online. Sorry, it's been a while since I did failover clustering, so some of this is a bit flaky for me. Yeah, so now we have the quorum running on node number 2. So if we look at here, we can actually see it. It's come through as well. So because we added the iSCSI disk on both nodes, you can see it's actually in both of these here, which is cool. So we have a queue volume, and we can just take out these disks in the mirror. So we want to take out disk number 2 and disk number 9 because these are the So what we can do now is we can actually break the mirror for this other volume. So if we go to the mirror, we want to remove those mirrors. So we want to remove it from, let's just double check that. We want to remove the mirror for disk number 1 and disk number 8 because disk number 11 is Nutanix disk. See, Nutanix disk. So let's go mirror, remove 1, remove 8. So the only mirror is going to be itself. Click OK. Won't be redundant. Disk view. Those disks are wiped. We're only on hard disk 11. Let's just check that our storage is still online. Yep, still online. So as you see there, removing the disk is seamless. And then we can actually take these disks out of this volume as well. So let's remove this. So remove disk from the deck. So we can actually remove both at once. So remove the hard disk 1 and hard disk 8. And that's done. So as you can see there, we'll just migrate our quorum from RDMs to Nutanix iSCSI while the cluster is still online, which is cool. So the disk's still online, we're all good to go. So next we can do the other disks. So Stripe drives are a bit easier to migrate because you don't need to do any mirroring. Disk number 12 we're going to add. So as you can see, the disk just got added to this file group. So let's try the migrate storage option. So what this should do is take all the data from these 4 drives and then migrate it to this one. So we're going to migrate from file 1. We're going to add our target disk as hard disk 12. And click finish. So the storage migration started. So we want to wait for that to finish before we take these drives out. So you can see storage still online, which is cool. Our Stripe volume. It's got a bit of data. So that's the, yeah. So we'll just take a pause there. So we'll look at the time, 2:48. Once it finishes, I'll resume. Removed from the volume. So what we can do now is we can just take these out. So we go remove disk from disk group. You can select them all. So it's going to pull out all 4 disks at once. Click OK. Just let it load. And there we go. So our volume is just a single drive all running on Nutanix. So as you can see, Nutanix V disks, RDMs are all gone. So let's migrate the next one now. So this is the mirrored drive for our other file server. I'll just check everything's still online. Yep, file cluster is still working. So big drive. So let's add disk 13. Finish. So again, we can add the mirror in here. So we go mirror, we add a mirror. Want to add one mirror, we will select this drive here. And we will mirror the data on it. So it's going to have to resynchronize the data here as well. So you can see the status here is resyncing. This might take a while because again, there's a lot of data on this drive. So our mirrored volume is using about 40 gigs again. So we just need to wait for that to resync. Once it's resynced, we can actually remove the mirror as well. So there's a bit more work for mirrored volumes. So we'll just put it, again, we'll put the video on pause and then just see how long that's going to take to mirror. So you can see here it started at 2:55 and it finished at just after 3 p.m. So not too long to migrate about 40 gigabytes of data to this new volume. So what we need to do now is we need to remove those other mirrors on the volume directly. So we'll go to mirror again and we will remove the other mirrors. So we have a total of 4 RDMs on this device. So we will select those and then we'll just leave hard disk 13. So hard disk 13 is the Nutanix disk. We'll break off these other mirrors as well. So we'll remove the 2 mirrors. Mirrors are removed. These disks become empty. And as we can see, the drives are still online, which is very cool. So now let's take out these other disks from the disk group. So we'll remove all these old drives, select all, take them out. Done. So now our failover cluster is completely running on Nutanix iSCSI disks, which is great. So what we'll do now is we can actually test a failover over iSCSI. And next what we'll do is we will remove the RDMs and then we'll migrate the cluster using Nutanix Move. So first of all, let's just try and move the cluster across the different nodes in our cluster. So fingers crossed this works. So let's just move this to node 2. So we want to put it on node 2, go OK. As you can see, our latency increased a bit for the drives, but we were still able to write data, so we didn't lose any writes, which is great. And our disks successfully came online, so that was a success for us for that first part. As we can see the disk groups in here too, which is cool. So next, let's remove the RDMs from VMware. So we can go back to vCenter and node 1. So we can just enter the settings here. We can disconnect the disks first. So what I'll do here is I'll just remove them. I don't want to delete the files from the data store. It doesn't actually delete anything because it's an RDM, but it just means if you keep the VMDKs on the data store, you can easily add them back in if you need to roll back. So we'll just pull out all the RDMs from this. Click OK. Wait for that to complete. Yeah, so we only have one hard disk now. The other thing we need to do is we actually need to remove the paravirtual SCSI controller. The reason being is it's got SCSI bus sharing configured, which is not supported by Nutanix Move. So we actually just need to delete the SCSI controller as well. So we can take that out. See that it's still all up and running. Yeah. So now if we look at the disk management, all those disks are gone. So we only have our other ones here. So as you can see, Veritas rescanned, removed the drives. And everything still remains online. Drives are still online on node 2. What we'll do now is we'll move those over to node 1. So let's take this role, select the node, move it to node 1. All running. And we'll move the core resources across as well. There we go. Everything is still online. We've only got 3 drives, which is nice. So now let's just double confirm that moved. So yeah, everything's run on node 1. So what we can do now is we can actually take the RDMs out of node 2. So go edit settings here and do a drive pool of all of these. So remove, 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 remove. I got the OS drive here. And let's take the SCSI controller out. So take that one out too. So again, only one disk. If we log on to that server, we should only see the single drive. So, got too many sessions open. Let's see where it is. 22. Yeah, so all the drives are gone, which is great. So now what we need to do is we actually need to prepare the virtual machine using Move. So since the RDMs are all removed, that's going to work. And because the iSCSI disks are running on Nutanix volumes, we have no problem to actually move the virtual machine, which we can again do online completely. So what we're going to do first is we're going to run the preparation in Move. So we want to prepare, we want to create a new migration plan. What I'm going to do for this migration plan is I'm going to actually create one per virtual machine. You can actually add it into one, but just for the purposes of the demo, it's going to look a lot more clearer if we migrate them in one plan at a time. So we'll create a plan. Actually, let's do node 2 first, because that's the one that's not running anything at the moment. Everything's on node 2, so we'll actually move node. Sorry, everything's on node 1, so we'll move node 2 first. We want the source to be VMware, a target to be AHV, and we'll just put them in the self-service container. We'll just refresh the environment, look for our VM. So our VM was, we're going to move, we will move node 2 first. So we can go yes, click next. We want to select our target network. We put it on VLAN 2716. We don't need a test network, so we're just going to do the guest tools, things like that as well. We will retain the static IP, and we'll also uninstall VMware tools on the target. So when it fails over to AHV, VMware tools will be uninstalled. So let's put the credentials in here to prepare the virtual machine. The first thing I'm actually going to do, I'm just going to put this node in maintenance mode. And the reason being is we don't want any of the clusters to fail back while we're actually doing a migration. So we can drain the roles here. So this will mean that because this node is paused, nothing's going to try and move back, which is good. So let's just get our VM credentials here. it next. Just leave all the default properties here. And then we'll prepare this virtual machine. I want to retain MAC addresses because sometimes failover cluster networks can go a bit funny if the MAC address changes. So because this is a failover cluster, it's probably recommended to retain the MACs. And we can save and start it. So what's going to happen here is the VM is going to be prepared and validated. So status in progress. But it's good we could actually connect to the virtual machine. So of the virtual machine. So let's keep this running and click continue. So cutover has been triggered. So what we should see here is we'll see node 2 offline. There we go. So node 2 is down. All our resources are on node 1, so still no outage, which is great. And it's now doing the final data sync. So yeah, my VM is shut down. Last second snapshot done for Nutanix Move. And the VM should come up soon on the second cluster. Sorry, on the Nutanix AHV cluster. So yeah, I've lost my RDP session. VM's getting configured. Let's just check Prism to see if the VM is up. So yeah, our second VM is up. Look at that, it's already done. So just RDP on. So yeah, we RDP'd onto it, okay. Let's check whether the cluster's up. So yeah, our disks are all online, which is cool. Check out iSCSI is working. Yep, so it looks like that was successful. So let's try and swing the cluster over to AHV from VMware. So let's resume this node. Let's move the services one at a time, just to make sure everything's okay. Move the core onto node 2. Yep, so that moved fine. So it looks like our cluster 2 is functioning all okay. Now let's swing the file server over to AHV as well. So we go to roles, let's move that role to node 2, click OK. Just check that everything remains online. Yes, great. So everything is on node 2. And our file server is still writing. We lost no writes, so that was an online migration to AHV. Now let's do the second node. So what we'll do now is we will pause node 1, and we will then migrate node 1 as well. So I want to pause it just so the cluster doesn't fail back to node 1. Let me just double confirm that's okay. Cluster 2, great. So yeah, let's pause cluster 1. We'll drain the roles, pausing that. File server still online. So now let's do the preparation of the first VM. So as we can see here, cluster 2 is shut down on VMware. We've still got cluster 1. So the cluster's running half on VMware, half on AHV. The good news is we had zero downtime. We were still able to write files for that whole time. Cool. So let's prepare our new migration plan. So we'll call this one Win Cluster 01. Win Cluster 1. Our source is VMware. Our target's AHV. Put it on the self-service again. We'll just refresh this. And then select cluster 1. VLAN 2716. We want to retain the static, uninstall VMware tools, and then let's put our credentials in here so we can do the preparation. Yep, let's retain the MAC address and configure the VM. And let's start this. So again, a very fast migration of data. It's probably because the data is quite small, only 14 gigabytes. So now let's do a cut over here. So we'll cut over the final VM. So VM will turn off from here as well, and then we will have our cutover completed. So again, our cluster is still online, which is great. That's because the other node is paused. So as you can see here, it's down, but it's fine because all the roles are running on node 2. So now our first VM's up, we can fail the nodes back to the first one, which will be good to go. All right, so our second cluster, our first cluster node has successfully been migrated as well. And as you can see, our cluster is still online. So let's just RDP onto it and take a look to make sure that the health is all okay. So as you can see here, both the cluster nodes are successfully running on AHV, and our two VMware VMs are shut down, and we are still successfully doing writes from our client. So let's just try a test failover the cluster between the nodes and resume it, just so we know that everything is okay. So we can resume this. Make sure it comes up. Yep, and we have both our nodes up here. So let's, like last time, swing the quorum over first and then check everything is still working. So yep, our quorum failed over, and now let's move the file cluster over to node 1 as well. And it's done. Latency increased slightly for the storage, but everything is still online. So there we have it. So we have successfully migrated a two-node Windows Failover Cluster running RDMs onto AHV with zero downtime. So thanks for watching the video, and I hope it was helpful. Thanks.